George was able to hear you.
Yeah. I was about to try to restart the computer, which takes about 15 minutes. So, I was trying to avoid that drastic step, but anyway, it looks like we are on now. I hope so. Where's the screen? Okay. I think we're on. I think I hit the go live button.
Yeah, it's live.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now I'm stressed out. Let's
take a deep breath. They all work out for the best.
And then, Michelle, if that happens again, you have the option of calling on the phone. With the Zoom, you could do the Zoom call in, but keep your video up. And then that way we can hear, you can hear us, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Okay.
My apologies. I don't know what happened. But anyway, let's get started. Where's my book?
I'll do the welcome.
Okay.
All right. Welcome to the book club meeting of Reading for Change, a collective journey. We're cluster 3. My name is Leon Salter, co-host. And price of admission is a copy of Begin Again. That's the book we're reading by Eddie Glaude.
All right.
Okay.
And I'm Michelle Odom in Brooklyn, New York. And Karen.
So I'm Karen Johnson in Salt Lake City, and I'll grab my book in a minute. I don't have it in front of me.
Are you sure you have the book, Karen?
Oh, yeah, I did have that book when it first came out.
All right. Well, did everybody get the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll read. That will refresh me.
Okay.
And probably cause me to de-stress. Everybody can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I must say I outdid myself with this visual.
You're patting yourself on the back. Okay.
Well, somebody got to do it. I can't get no love from you, so. But that tells the story. So, all right. The quote at the top, hope not hopeless, but unhopeful, by W.E.B. Chapter 6, Ruins of Begin Again, James Baldwin's America and its Urgent Lessons for Our Own, by Eddie S. Glaude Jr. The author focuses on the artist's views after the civil rights movement, as well as events in our own after times, post-Obama, such as the disastrous election of Donald Trump. Below are highlights. Baldwin wanted to write an essay he would call Remember This House in 1979 for The New Yorker. He wanted to focus on the South and all the change he had seen since 1957 from the perspective of his own after times. Important legislation had been passed during the 1960s and rights gained for Black people, women, and gays. But by the 1970s, a conservative economic and political philosophy would come to dominate the American imagination for decades, along with the 1980 election of Ronald Reagan. The complex relationship between history and memory preoccupied Jim, and Blacks and whites saw Reagan quite differently. Baldwin believed an unflinching confrontation with the ruins was needed in the aftertimes of the 1970s, as opposed to a retreat into a distorted memory of the past. While he did not write the New Yorker essay, he was open to allowing the filmmaker Dick Fontaine to follow him on a trip south. James Baldwin wanted to leave us with a clear and accurate picture of how the country betrayed the civil rights movement by failing to take perhaps its last opportunity to create a truly multiracial democracy. The 1981 film by Fontaine, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, at the dawn of the age of Reagan, follows Baldwin from Harlem on a returning trip through the New South. Much of what is commonly described as progress, Baldwin saw as illusion that blinded future generations to America's failures between 1957 and 1980. His trip includes visits with Sterling A. Brown of Howard University, who gave Baldwin his charge, and Dave Dennis of Mississippi Corps, who recalled the tragic experience of Ben Chaney, the younger brother of James Chaney. Both Baldwin and Dennis believed the movement's betrayal had quite possibly sealed America's future. Reagan's ascendancy on the national stage was a clear sign to Blacks and whites that the era of Black freedom struggles and New Deal optimism had closed, and a new regime intent on dismantling virtually all of the gains of the 1960s had come in its place. Focused on states' rights, small government, law and order, and personal responsibility, even prominent civil rights leaders like Ralph Abernathy and Hosea Williams would succumb to Reagan's charms. Baldwin was not amused. Neither was Shelley. The film only considers Black power in a minor way, as it features scenes of Baldwin in Newark with Amiri Baraka and footage of the Newark riots. The two men had grown closer in political views over the years. It also has a scene with Baldwin and his brother David in New York City, showing what Baldwin thought of Reagan's views on escaping poverty. Baldwin understood that voting has value as a way of buying time, but in 2016, Glaude did not. He discouraged support for Hillary Clinton and did not grasp that America had entered a new era of after times, post-Obama, until Trump had been elected. With transparency, courage, and maturity, Dr. Eddie Glaude Jr. acknowledged his mistake. Moreover, rather than seeing Donald Trump as a purely evil racist in the tradition of Strom Thurmond, George Wallace, and Patrick Buchanan, he encourages readers to see the ways in which Trump reflects the true, more nuanced character of Americans as the rightful demoncy of Ronald Reagan, or words to that effect. Baldwin could not have imagined the euphoria around Barack and Michelle Obama, but would have recognized the aftertimes heralded by Donald Trump. Here in the ruins, where modern conservatism has collapsed and been replaced by tried and true strategies of divide and conquer, Glaude calls for an honest confrontation with and condemnation of one's complicity with a way of life that insists that some people matter more than others. The illusion of safety provided by Obama's presidency and the public rituals and incantations Americans use to blind ourselves to the truth cannot fix what ails us. In the closing passage to this section that is truly Baldwin-esque, Eddie Glaude shows Americans what we look like beneath the veil of lies that keep us trapped in repeating cycles of misery. The film on James Baldwin, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, brings the country face to face with its failures. Baldwin could also see the failure gentrification would become. To break this cycle, inner reflection is needed, an unhopeful hope that offers enough stamina to begin again the work of making America more beautiful. So, I remember this chapter. What you got?
Well, more say remember the chapter. I remember the time of Reagan. I painfully admit I voted for Reagan.
You did?
Yeah, I voted for Reagan. And I just, looking back, it was, I had bought the propaganda hook, line, and sinker. We went from Nixon to Carter, and Carter wasn't the charismatic leader. He wasn't the guy, and that was the propaganda that has been sold to us, use an example of John Wayne or this big person's coming from somewhere to save us. Reagan was smooth. Reagan had that talk. He could talk the talk, and during the whole time, he's like, watch this hand, and he's doing something over here. And he just completely dismantled a support system here in the United States. He just took away, he gave us welfare queens. He gave us a lot of things or images that we didn't want to be a part of. He knew from his Hollywood days how to put together a narrative and a story. And to this day, I always think the Democrats never took on the understanding that most people aren't going to read anything. Go to the facts. They're not going to go to the facts. They're going to take that sound bite that comes on the news, that sound bite that the president gives in a briefing. Then once he starts talking about the details, they either go to sleep or say, well, okay, I know what I need to know. They got these welfare queens out here getting hundreds of thousands of dollars of my money, and I am, a working American. They have, I think it came out when at least for me, the whole thing about middle class isn't Black people. Middle class or working class isn't Black people in the soundbite. That's the dog whistle for white people, hard working white people. So they were throwing these things out. Welfare queen, what image do you get? So that's those things, they gave us everything. Nixon, he had the whole Democratic convention in Chicago and busting heads and whatnot. So that was Nixon. Reagan he did the same thing, but he was smoother with it when he came to the podium. He was just smoother. When Nixon couldn't beat Kennedy because he wasn't smooth. He still had the same audience. He just wasn't smooth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember when Reagan was running, and the Black people, at least the circles that I traveled in, and which more, these were Black folks who believed in Black liberation and were activists, used to say that if Reagan gets in office, Black folks he'll put us back on the plantation. And so there was this concern about Reagan coming into office because he would be the detriment to us as a people. Plus, prior to coming to office, he had a problematic track record as governor in the state of California.
Yes, he did.
So for me, he was a danger, extremely problematic.
But nobody like as you said, Doc, you were traveling in a circle that was knowledgeable of Reagan. Here at my house, my parents, no, Reagan seems to be okay. You know, I mean, and two King's major lieutenants bought into Reagan. You know, Reagan, you know, the Patty Hearst thing, I think he was governor when she got snatched up. The Soledad brothers, Angela Davis. I mean, he came down hard. I mean, he came down hard every time. And their only thing was to blame poor people and blame Black people for what was going on. You know, personal initiative. That was the hot word, personal initiative. And that's what they taught us in school. If you wanted to get A's, you studied harder. If you wanted to make the baseball team, you tried harder. A personal initiative. So now they have been giving us that jargon for a long, at least giving it to me, all through elementary, middle school, and high school. Now I get a chance to vote, and Reagan's selling the same BS. Oh, personal initiative. You know, I mean, the welfare queen is sitting home watching TV, you know, but the same welfare that we give to Del Monte and Dole and the auto industry, I think in my life that I know we bailed Chrysler out 2 times. Chrysler bailed out twice. And you don't hear much about that. You know, these guys are sitting, you know, they talk about big government. They try to make small government. We bailed out Chrysler twice. We bailed out the airlines a few times.
The banks.
Even the railroad.
Yeah. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Reagan was hard. He was pro apartheid. He said it. He had hard things to say about Nelson Mandela.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody called him to task. When I say nobody, Black leadership didn't call him to task about it. And I don't know if they could. I don't know if they could at all.
I was probably in some of the same circles you were in at that time, Karen, because I was a legal secretary, and I was working for a law firm in Harlem, Stevens, Hines, Jackson, and White. And I had gotten the job because my best friend at the time was this woman named Cynthia Jackson, and her big sister, 10 years older than her, Deborah Jackson, who I don't know if she's currently, but she at one point became the mayor of Lithonia, Georgia. But at the time, she was practicing law in Harlem as a partner in this firm.
She wasn't Maynard Jackson, right?
No.
Yeah.
But the firm had been founded by Hope Stevens, who was a well-known long-term civil rights attorney in Harlem. And it included Lennox Hines, another well-known attorney. And they were doing a lot of work. I think Lennox at the time may have been the national director or president of something, of the National Conference of Black Lawyers. So I was around all of those kinds of folks, and they were doing a lot of the big trials of the time. And I remember Deborah gave me a reading list of 100 books. Y'all know to this day, I've got 1,000,001 questions. I had a lot of questions back then. And Deborah would always say, I'm not going to tell you what to think, but, I just want you to read. And she gave me a list of 100 books. And I don't know if I've made it through the list, but I started going through the list. So 1980 was my first presidential election. And it was clear to me by that point that Reagan was not I'm going to get my vote. But I voted for, I don't know, the communist or the socialist or the independent or somebody, as long as it was not Ronald Reagan. And then Ronald Reagan got elected, and I was devastated. And I felt like I had thrown my vote away. So I was very much relating in this chapter to how Dr. Glaude felt about not supporting Hillary Clinton, because he couldn't believe that, that Donald Trump, that Americans would actually elect Donald Trump. I didn't believe Americans would actually elect Ronald Reagan, but they can and they do, and that's who we are.
Right.
So, so it's hard.
There's a piece in here, I think that's that I like what that Glaude wrote, and it starts on page 49 and towards the bottom.
149?
149.
Okay.
Towards the bottom. So you see that the last paragraph, but I'm looking at the last 4 sentences go in where it says the Black Freedom Movement, you all see that?
Got it.
Had in some significant way transformed America. But as historian Vincent Hardy wrote, the soul of America had not been redeemed. As a matter of fact, its deepest character had only been fully revealed, and all the long-held suspicions of Black people concerning the nature of racism, North and South, were confirmed. The nation had brazenly refused to give up the lie, and in the growing energy of reactionary conservatism, actually seemed to be working harder than ever to secure it. And I really like that line because that does speak to, what we were talking about in terms of how being surprised that Reagan won, being surprised that even Trump won, because it speaks to, I feel, this determination on the part of holding on to white supremacy and using whatever lie it can to have us be thinking that, oh, this is a democratic society. But seeing that these politicians, regardless if they're north, south, east, west, are determined to hold on to that lie, and at the same time, making that white supremacy doesn't change. Right. That white supremacy is continue to be entrenched in this nation.
And I think some of what I hear in Leon's story is really a kind of attraction to this toxic masculinity that, I think is very attractive to the Black men and Hispanic men who support Donald Trump. There's something about that machismo that, no matter the foolishness coming out of that man's mouth, that would seem, beyond obvious.
Well, when you look at the data, Michelle, because I know I talked about this during the time, that the data revealed that a large number of men of color did vote for Trump. The other candidate. They didn't vote, only a small percentage of men of color voted for Trump. But a larger number voted for the opposition.
I just don't understand how he got any. I don't understand how he got any.
Voter suppression. And that's where we have to engage in this fight. We keep forgetting that people have been purged. There's voters restriction in terms of voter registration. All of these things contribute to this man winning. Trump winning the election due to voter suppression.
But Doc, what you're talking about is a strategy that the Republicans have. Voter suppression, all these different little things to stop us from voting. My question is, where are the Democrats and their strategy to give people the ability to vote? I mean, the Democrats are always a step behind and more reactionary than proactive. They're, oh, we got to do this now because this is done. The Republicans have a strategy. They went after the Supreme Court, and they talked about this 20 years ago when Clarence Thomas was pushed through. So I don't see the same strategic effort as the Republicans do, or white supremacists. They have a plan and they work their plan. For such a long time, we were seen to be leaderless. And I don't know if we need a leader, but we don't have a plan. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we're free at last. We got to get beyond that.
I mean, one thing, I think, especially in this era, the 1980s, when I think about the Republicans versus the Democrats, one thing the Republicans have always had going for them is a lot of homogeneity. Just like one big white ass across the screen. So all they have to do is get their people together to say, this is what we believe, this is what we want to do, this is how we're going to do it. The Democrats for a long time have fashioned themselves as the Big Tent. So all of the diversity that makes life so difficult in America is present in the Democratic Party. So, you might be able to get with gays and lesbians, but you can't really get with the transgender stuff. You may be okay with the Blacks, but you can't stand the Mexicans. So all of that division goes on in the Democratic Party, which I think makes it that much more of a challenge to come up with a plan and to execute the plans that exist.
But I think the same type of challenges are in the Republican Party, but they have a focus on, we're going to do something. I think your point is correct, Michelle, but then we fall apart and do nothing. Opposed to, okay, we agree. This are the two things we do agree on. So let's focus on that. These three other things over here, we're going to have to negotiate and work our way through. Don't just take your ball and go home, and I take my ball and go home, and nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. That's my thing. When Clinton was elected, the Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, just as they did when Obama was elected. And soon after that, it changed. Clinton was president, but the Senate was Republican. And they, so we look for the Democrats look for bipartisanship. That when the last two Supreme Court justices went through, they didn't care about, we just want to win. And that's what we got to look at. We just want to win.
Right. Well, and that's, but that I also think is a part of, I can't remember who it is I heard a couple of days ago that was playing on Michelle Obama's words of when they go low, we go high.
Right.
And this person was saying, no, we got to go low, ant, dirt, low.
Right. We got to realize we're in a fight. We don't have to win the wrong battle. We got to realize we're in a fight.
But I think that is also a part of the difficulty of the diversity or the difference that I'm talking about.
I think the gay person that Hispanic, everybody want to win.
That I think that it's one thing to say that you want to win at all costs, but more thoughtful people ask themselves, what are they becoming in the process of winning at all cost? I don't want to be Donald Trump. If Donald Trump sets the terms by which I move through the world, I've lost already because I don't want to be Donald Trump. And so I think that there's always this thing on the left of not wanting to be the very things that we are desperately fighting against. And it causes the problem that you're talking about because people who have no morals, people who have no boundaries, people who have no standards always win because there's nothing they won't do. But if you're asking yourself, who do I want to be in the world? It's a different question.
But you still can, the question is different. But at not winning, if you don't win, Trump or anyone like that, Reagan, they're running the show. So you're still subject to their rules.
They are, and you're right. And, I'm not saying we don't need to find a better way, but I'm saying I think that becomes the challenge, not wanting to become the thing that you're fighting against.
Okay. I agree. I definitely agree. But I think we have to, we or the group has to accept the fact that we have to agree to disagree on certain factors, and we might have to table those factors, but we have to be in some form controlling, because what happens is you get a Supreme Court that we have right now, you get an economy that we have right now, and basically we're blaming poor people for being poor, we're blaming Black people for being Black, we're blaming immigrants for being immigrants. If you read the Constitution, you got to present yourself in order to be considered. Now, Trump and other people are telling you, no, don't even come. But you can bring white people in droves. I mean, you can bring them in droves.
But some of what I think is also going on, at least as far as Black people are going on, I heard it through the grapevine, the song, 10 different versions of it all week long, trying to listen to it from the perspective of politics and, why did they choose that name for the film, following Baldwin through the South. And so like the passage that Karen just read to us and, this thought of the lies of American democracy. So when you think about that song, what comes to me is, there is no love. I heard it through the grapevine. Not much longer will you be mine. Right. And, we've been so determined to buy into the lies or to look at the vision of America and make America live up to its promise.
Right.
But America has been telling us over and over and over again, got no love for you.
Right. Do you think when same thing here, I thought about the song, I thought about, what King did, what Malcolm did, and what other primarily Black leaders were trying to do to make America live up to its promises. If any other approach was taken, I'm assuming we would have been at war, some type of civil war again in America. Because I think from the word go, they were not going to live up to they didn't consider us part of the promise. Never. Right. So now King, Malcolm, and everybody is saying you have to live up to the promises. And hell, we never promised you anything. And and maybe in their infamous ways, they figured out, or wise ways, they figured out that if we push this too far, it's going to be blood in the streets. And we've
Right.
seen that at different times. We've seen it in Newark, Watts. We've seen it in Chicago. We've seen it in every major city in America. Around
Right.
68 and 71, we've seen these situations go off.
Right.
And then like I thought about.
So if we were like, I remember listening to Dr. James McIntosh. He's a psychiatrist. And when BJ and I, my friend Janice Graham and I, we produced a few episodes that were looking at the crumbling democracy in America through the lens of The Handmaid's Tale. And we had a few scholars as guests to look at that question. And when Dr. McIntosh was on, he was talking about he is so removed from what is happening in American politics and so focused on building the world that he wants to be a part of. He's aware that American democracy is crumbling, but that's not where the basket that he's putting his eggs in anyway. And so I'm just saying, if we were accepting that there is no love for Black people in America, then what different road might it lead us down? Because the idea of having to become a Donald Trump wannabe in order to, participate in civic life, I think for some of us is just never going to cut it. So then the question is, so then what? Because you're right, Leon, if you don't play the game, then you are just subjected to their power.
I think the other part of it is that we need to understand that the Democrats and the Republicans are basically two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
That one might be neoconservative, white nationalist, the other one is neoliberal capitalists that don't have the best interest of everyday folk at their intersections of race and class, gender, sexuality, orientation, etc. They don't have the interest at hand. When we look at Biden, who got elected based on certain types of promises, and we getting a few of them in terms of symbolic, all of that is over now. Because now he's always says that I'm a capitalist. And then there's a history of him being a warmonger and supporting wars. Okay.
Yeah.
So where we are now is revealing the true nature of Biden, and that this whole idea of implementing policies for, like I mentioned before, the Voting Rights Act or federal laws that deal with policing in America, all of that is gone. And it's all of that is gone, but it took folks marching in the streets. And that's the movement that has to continue. Even when we look at the labor, what is happening with Amazon, what is happening with Starbucks, with laborers, realizing we will not be exploited in this neoliberal corporate capitalist society, and we will take our rights into our own hands by protesting. And I think it has to be grassroots folks who have this level of awareness to continue to embark on a struggle for change, but understanding that we can't depend, or even when politicians get into office, that we just can't sit back and say, okay, he's going to do such and such, or she's going to do such and such. We have to keep the fire under their feet and continue to fight, as African Americans have done from the very beginning. We've been on these shores fighting to attempt this country to move towards a true democracy, but we cannot never give up, never give up. Even though we have reforms. I am reimagined. I mean, this kind of government is not supportive of human rights. It has to be a transformed, a totally revolutionary type of society.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
More like a socialist society. One that takes in consideration issues of human rights and environmental issues and saving this planet. But we don't have that. And we never really had that.
Right.
Right. Sure don't have it with the Democrats today.
Right. Have it with anybody, you know.
No, right?
Nobody's putting that flag up. I mean, it's just nobody.
Right.
And I think Doc is right from the standpoint is the people, so much is going to lie with the people, but so much lies with information. So right now with this whole dumbing down of history, that's what I'm calling it. They're basically rewriting it, dumbing it down and taking out anything that doesn't fit a particular narrative. So, and that's a long-term strategy here again. And anybody that wants to look at it differently as far as let's read history as it happened, opposed to let's try to rewrite it. We have to have a long-term strategy in order to confront the lie, the propaganda. I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, custard and all that kind of crazy stuff, that's why people don't like Indians, because they killed Custer, some blonde-haired guy that was a hero. And we have to really look at it from a long-term perspective of how do we make sure our grandkids' kids, and people are getting information. Here in the Philadelphia area, there's one Black talk station on the radio, and there's one Black newspaper in this area. And if you listen to the talk station or read the newspaper and then watch any of the 3, 6, and 10, any of the major network, NBC, ABC, and CBS, it's like we're talking about two different places, literally talking about two different places. I mean, affordable housing in Philadelphia is almost non-existent for poor people. When you say affordable housing, they're giving 5 and 6 years tax abatements to $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 condos, so you don't have to pay taxes on this for that time period, and it's transferable. So if you stay there 2 or 3 years and you want to sell it, you got to pay taxes. Here's the information, and we are, you got people hungry in the richest country in the world. Food pantries are being stretched to the nth degree. And, we got to have a long-term strategy for taking care of the people, because right now, I don't think the Democrats or the Republicans are looking at the people in a long-term situation. It's almost like the strong survive. Whoever those folks are and those minions that we need to do the grunt work. You're going to need a gardener. You're going to need a guy to clean the car. You're going to need a guy to do this, a woman to cook, or whatever those jobs may be, but it's not going to be on any large number. Hell, man, you can get food, bring it to your house, scan it, and the microwave cooks it to order right there from reading the scan. So you're going to need a whole lot of cooks. You're not going to need a whole lot of gardeners. You're not going to need a whole lot of things. So we have to make sure we are focused on that, and how we don't get caught up in the bamboozle, the actual, believe in a lie, which I did with Reagan. Reagan came through and I kind of believed the lie. And then I tell everybody, if it wasn't for the OJs and Eddie Levert talking about apartheid, they weren't going to go over to a place called Sun City in South Africa. And they weren't going to go over there. I had no idea. About now. I heard about Stephen Bake or Stephen
Biko.
And that was like it was like a pamphlet handed out at Rutgers when I was in school, but it wasn't anything big time. And, they killed him, and the government, nobody flinched. Nobody. But Eddie LeVert said, we're not going to play Sun City. And then I heard a couple other activists talking about it. Gil Scott-Heron had a song about Sun City. And then I thought, oh, okay. But no, nor did we hear anything about it in the news. And that's where things go here in Philadelphia at times, or in the greater Philadelphia area.
Mm-hmm. 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 I was thinking, in this book, Glaude mentions that that Baldwin used to go to this club jazz club called McKell's.
Okay, yes.
On 90s. I used to hang out there. That goes to that club.
That is closed down.
Oh yeah, it's a Whole Foods. But back in the day, because I used to go. Let's say Whitney Houston's mom. Oh, Sissy Houston used to play there a lot.
Okay.
And Phyllis Hyman.
Okay.
And I remember once when I went with my fiance at the time. And Sissy Houston was singing, and then she said, I want to introduce you to my daughter. And Whitney Houston, she was just a young teenager, and she sang, and the club just went wild. So that McKell's was a really nice gathering place, jazz place during that time. And I never heard of a film that he did, Remember This House? And I just thought it's interesting. Were you able to look at it? Or did it ever get published?
I think that what the Remember This House did not get written, but it became, I heard it through the grapevine.
Oh,
and that guy Fontaine wanted to do like Baldwin's whole life story or life works. And he wrote a script to do that, which pissed Baldwin off. And Baldwin said, no, you can follow me on a trip through the South. Stay in your lane.
Okay. But the way it was written, the way Glaude writes this, seems like he watched these clips.
Yeah. And the film, I did look for the film. I heard it through the grapevine, but it's not currently streaming anywhere or even available for purchase. But there are some descriptions of the different stops that he made. So Glaude really is only giving us a couple of the stops, but he stopped a lot of places.
Michelle, do you know who owns the licensing rights to I Heard It Through the Grapevine?
No, but I think I saw it in what I was reading. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
Now, and here, that's another question in my mind. I think now I'm biased right now, but I think something like that should be on YouTube. That should be out there.
Yeah, and that was the shocking thing to me that but it's another example of what Baldwin was talking about of blacking out, whiting out, the true history.
Right.
And so he tries to correct for that with making the film, and now we can't get the film.
Right. So, but see, and that's not an accident. That didn't happen. Somebody didn't let something slip. That was deliberate. And that's the way we are being fed a history or information that is not accurate. And that's I think is a lot more of the battle than the protesting on the streets. Certain books, there's a book, a school board in Florida that were pulling math books. They're saying they're, making people feel bad. How can numbers? I never figured that one out. And they won't let the list out so you can see all the books. To see what happens is if you don't let any book that Doc writes into so she doesn't make any money out of it, but this person over here, you're going to let them flood it in, and this person now, and then the legacy that this guy will create is one of a white's world. So,
so on page, I don't know if you all have the same page. Under author's note is 227 at the top, and Glaude writes, in working on chapter 6, I had an opportunity to visit Dick Fontaine paper and film outtakes collection housed at Harvard University. So that's where we would find it. I wanted to see what went into the making of I Heard It Through the Grapevine and what was left on the cutting floor. So we probably had to go through to his archival papers at Harvard in order to get access to that. Yeah.
Wow.
And, you remember when Dexter King and the sister were fighting over the fathers for Dr. King's papers, where they were going to be housed at?
Right.
This kind of leads to the same thing because, the family gets paid or whoever gets paid, and then they just get buried. So they'll let certain scholarly people see them, but for somebody who's just surfing YouTube or surfing the internet, oh, what is this? Right. That's gone. And the scholarly folks will be slowly died off.
Well, I think you have access. Not just scholarly people have access to archival papers. You just have to contact Harvard University to their archival library and share that you want to look at the Fontaine, for example, papers, and maybe even get a description why, and you say you're interested in doing research on whatever. I mean, you'll have access.
But see, but I'm not sure how you got the knowledge that the access is available.
Right.
But if it was someone
everyday folks don't have that knowledge. Everyday folks don't know what to say and how to get it.
And are you saying that Harvard would put the papers in the mail to you, or you have to physically go to Harvard University?
You gotta have the money to travel to Harvard unless they have it digitized. Unless they get it digitized. If they didn't, then you're gonna have to go up there to Harvard. So it is a privileged kind of lifestyle that one has to have the money to go, and they know what to say.
Right.
To have access.
Right.
To those papers.
The college freshman who read one of James Baldwin's books, okay? And then he says to himself, well, what's going on? I mean, and then he just kind of starts doing a very wide search on the internet. He's not going to run across the Harvard reference. He's just not. Right. He might, but then if he does, it'll be a brick wall for him because where do I go from there?
Right.
Right. Okay. Anything else we want to point out from this? I thought the story about Ben Chaney was so compelling.
Wasn't that sad? I thought it was just sad. And Ben's life was a result of the trauma.
Yeah.
If you just look, it's Ben turned into a thug, and his brother did all that. No, there was a trauma. And lots of times you don't see the correlation. What is presented is here's this guy that has turned his life to shit. Why, his brother picked up the flag and did what he had to do. And that could be from, one of those Fox News guys. Now they got the spin, but they're not going to give you the trauma of did you remember the description of how his brother's body was found from the autopsy? It was just it was beat to death. He had never seen, the doctor had never seen anything that
and all the bodies, all the decapitated bodies,
right,
that they found along the way of searching for Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney.
And those three happen to have some notoriety. They were saying there were other bodies there.
Right.
And that's how they work. The hanging, the guy getting hanged or the woman getting hanged, that's a one and done. You left them up there so everybody could see.
Right.
And that was the point of, we took them to the same place that we've been taking these people to, and everybody knew, but nobody could find them.
Yeah.
Everybody knew. And you could have been new from the moon. As long as you was white, they would have told you. You want to see something? Go over there. So yeah.
The Ben Cheney story reminded me. I was telling Leon, when I was around that same age. Well, I guess I was closer to my mid-20s. And by that point, I was no longer in Harlem. I was in DC. And I had gotten involved with Stokely Carmichael's group, Kwame Toure's group, the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And they had a study group on the campus of Howard. And, and so that was cool. But then they were organizing to recruit people to go to Africa to do, political organizing. And I was really, really thinking about doing it. And that's about the time that I got pregnant. And then I couldn't imagine running through the jungles of Africa with a rifle in one hand and a baby on the hip. And I was like, maybe I'll stay local for a while. So my son kind of saved me from that. But I can see, just how easily, and that's why everybody has got their eye on young people, because you can get them real passionate. And, it may be a good thing. I mean, I think what Kwame Ture was trying to do was a good thing. Or it may not be a good thing. But at that age, you can get real passionate about an issue and do things that will, direct the course of your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, as we said, Michelle, groups are looking for that late teen, early 20s person. I mean, because they bring enthusiasm, they bring energy, they bring strength, and they are looking for leadership or understanding. And if you pour the right thing or the wrong thing into them, then that's going to be their understanding. And then they'll take it from there. They'll pretty much take it from there. They'll build from there, but you got to pour something into them because, you hear about, like when I was younger, you got pregnant or you have single mom. There's always been single moms in all communities. There's always been single moms. That's not like a new phenomenon. And what had happened was we taken away the history of the single mom who has done things and who has, against all odds, raised their children. Against all odds, put people in society who are a benefit to society. But that narrative never played out or was never presented as the overall narrative. If given a hand, she will do well. So, but what was told was, she's driving a Cadillac or she's living here and not working. Well, how can you work if then if your kids are home by themselves? Who's raising the kid? But that has always been a thing. The young ones are the ones that we want. That demographic is the ones that we want because one, they got a longer upside. Two, they're moldable. They're definitely moldable, and they're listening, because now their cognitive skills are developed, so they can take some information and critically analyze it and say, okay, I'm in. This why are we doing this? They'll ask certain questions, almost like a toddler.
Right.
Just keep asking why.
Yep. All right. Well, we have 2 weeks left on this book.
Okay.
And any final comments on the ruins?
Well, I think it
brought back a lot of memories, right?
Memories. It brought back the memories, a lot of memories, and how I got to a certain thought process on certain things with little to no information. When you sit down and say little to no information, I was making these big decisions, in regards to why certain things are a certain way. And I had little to no information.
Right. Yeah. So
that is a cautionary tale.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm enjoying this book. I'm glad this was a book of choice.
Yeah. And the biggest part of it, I enjoy the conversation we have and the perspective that everybody brings.
Right.
There is no one perspective that's right. And to hear what Karen has to say, and from her perspective, and be able to say, okay, I didn't think of it that way, but I understand what she's saying.
Okay.
And which is cool. And same with Michelle, she'll bring up something and say, okay, not the way I looked at it, but let me look into it.
Right.
We can go from there. And I always, I think we have, as men and women, we have more in common, especially Black men and women have more in common than we have not. Right. And to make sure that we listen to each other. Don't listen for comment, listen to understand. Right. And I think that takes us a far way.
Yes. It's been a good group. I've really enjoyed this, Michelle. And
me too.
Thank you. Well, Leon, I think Leon was saying to me that I could choose the next book.
Okay.
Did I get that right, Leon?
I'm not 100% sure about that. But I mean, Karen should have some say in it. Should be vote. Some kind of vote. I mean, some kind of vote. We should put some things on the table and vote on them.
I thought I heard you say that I had done such a good job with this selection.
Here again.
All right, we can talk about it later.
Little information.
All right. Y'all have a good week. It's springtime in New York. I'm gonna go to a street fair.
Yeah, I gotta wash the car. I gotta get out there and wash the car.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, folks.
All right. Have a good week.
Your day.
See you later.
All right. Peace.
Bye.